Now, I'm so honored that we have Nicola Olyslagers here with us today. Nicola is the world champion, world field athlete of the year, two-time Olympic silver medalist, and two-time indoor world champion. But more importantly, she is an absolutely exceptional person. And while her achievements in high jump are remarkable, what sets Nick apart is her approach to the mental side of performance. Her ability to stay grounded under pressure and embrace challenges and consistently perform on the biggest stage is something athletes and coaches can learn from alike. Nicola has shown that mindset is not just a trait, it is a skill and it can be developed and strengthened over time. Welcome, Nick. Now, to begin, my first question for you, I want to talk about the first time I saw how different your approach to the mental side of sport and high jump was. So in 2017, you made your first ever Open Australian team at the 2017 London World Championships. And you went over to London and no-heighted, which is most athletes and most coaches' worst nightmare. When you came back into the gym, you came and you said something completely different to what I expected. Do you remember what you said to me?
I'm not completely sure I remember word for word, but I remember being unfazed by the performance that I did.
Yeah, you came in with a big smile on your face and you said to me that you had the most amazing experience and you can match it with the best of them. Now, can you talk me through that experience and that response? Because that's not the typical response of most athletes. So to you, what was that experience like and how is the mindset in that no heighting?
Yeah, I feel like as a high jumper, I mean, we always love to start safe, start at a height that you know that you can get. And for me, the starting height of 1 meter 80 is something I had done 1,000 times before. But when it came to the surface in London, I wasn't used to it, and it was such a brand new experience. No matter what I did, it didn't work that day. I remember my 3 attempts, tried all of these different things, and it just wasn't working. But I remember sitting down and went, wow, I have the front row seat of the best high jump competition in the world. It was a completely different mindset. And I think while I was there, I was actually able to meet my competitors who are the best in the world. And at that time, I know as a junior, maybe the thought of that would have been overwhelming and thinking, how will you ever recover from that? But I recognized I brought a lot to the sport, even if I didn't get the right height. And what I learned as well under pressure was that our run up and the way that we had to do things, you learn so much more out of your failures than than like the bars that you jump. So Matt and I, we went and we trained the next day. We did a high jump session, and I got over 1 meter 80 like 10 times. But for that competition, it showed me that under pressure, I had to make sure that my technique was ready for the world stage.
Yeah, brilliant, Nick. Now, let's go back. You just spoke about being a junior. Now, you weren't a junior prodigy. You're a great athlete, but you weren't that prodigy. You didn't win your first national title until you were 22. And you had periods where you didn't even medal at nationals, which is completely normal. But sadly, a lot of junior athletes often feel that they need to have that success consistently and quickly. And they either leave the sport or potentially leave their coach when it doesn't come. So, what, looking back, what kept you engaged or motivated and connected to athletics when you weren't having that success? Or what did Matt do in the periods where you weren't achieving the results that you hoped for? How did you approach it? How did he approach it? And what worked to keep you in the sport?
Yeah, when I started with Matt, I was 11, and he told me, I think you could be one of the best high jumpers, but it will take at least 10 years to get there. And so even as a teenager, when I wasn't the best, we were always thinking of the long term rather than the short term. And he said, I'd rather you make an Olympic Games than, win the World Junior Championships. And because we both had that, and he was really encouraging, and he said, like, look, we're going to try our best together to try and get there. Like, Matt had never coached an Olympic athlete. I hadn't seen one. Like, I grew up on the central coast of New South Wales. Like, I wasn't around many Olympians, so it was almost like a unicorn. You're like, where are they? Especially like high jumpers. Um, but yeah, I think when I was experiencing it, we had to learn, even by not winning nationals and by not being the best at such a young age, I had to embrace progress over those position and podiums. And I really had to um, be thankful for what I was doing. And I realized my journey was going to look different. So that by the time I was 22 and I got my first national title, it was such a success, and it was a great like moment to celebrate. But I was so thankful that I knew that the reason I stayed in sport wasn't based on medals. And I learnt that through not being the best. So that's sort of my encouragement. If you're not at a stage where you'd really, you're aiming and you're aspiring to, some things just take a lot of time. And if you have a team that's willing to go with you the whole way, then you'll find that you'll reach those big goals.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into the next part of you do seem to care less about titles and specifically winning than a lot of people in the sport. Now, you look at that process of improvement. So my first question is, what in your career are you most proud of up until this current point? And second, am I actually correct in saying that you care less about titles and winning than you do about the process?
Yeah, like I have a sports psychologist, and in 2019 I started working with him, and he told me that comparison is the biggest killer of passion. So as soon as you start comparing yourself, based on where other athletes are at, the passion that you have to compete and the love that you have, it will slowly just, it's like a hole at the bottom of a bucket, it'll just all drain out. And so for me, when I have a medal, like let's say the gold medal or the silver medal, if I'm really aiming for medals, then what happens is I'm comparing my performance to all of my competitors. So, like, I might have a bad day in the office, but then if you get a gold medal, it's like, well, it was all worth it. And I mean, it's like my first world champs win last year. It was at a height that in 2 meters I've jumped over around 20 times now. So the performance itself wasn't like that benchmark, but it is one of the biggest career moments of my life. So it's like, it's a wrestle. It's so I've been learning that process of learning when I miss the heights, I'm actually closer than I ever have been before to getting it. And that really excites me. So my goal is that I want to be able to do something I've never been able to do before. So last year I jumped 204, which was something that I hadn't been able to do, and I had attempted it a lot. And so when I finally got to it and I got over it, I recognized that I was in the best shape of my life. And I like prize that actually even more than the nice shiny things that came with that. And because of that, like let's say this year, I'm recognizing I can actually take risks and I can grow grow muscles and things. Like I'm not competing right now in some major competitions because I have faith that what I'm doing right now with my team is allowing me to go further than 204. And that means taking risks and building that kind of consistency is saying yes to all of the process, which means saying no to maybe all of the little shiny things on the way. And if I have really worked out the right competitions that we're aiming to get that kind of benchmark, that allows me to say no to a lot of other things. And that's where I find consistency is good. What you say yes to and what you say no to on a consistent basis, then like your decisions then produce actions that then those actions eventually compiled up will produce a result.
Okay, let's talk about consistency. You mentioned your consistency. Now, I'm very biased, but I truly believe you're the most consistent jumper, at least at the moment, in the high jump. So, for you, what does it take to be consistent, both physically and mentally, and how have you maintained it over a period of time?
When I'm over a period of time, like, so I'll have some little checkpoints. So my two biggest checkpoints throughout the year is after my season, so that's around October, and then around like the beginning of the, like, let's say April, so the end of the domestic season and the start of the outdoor season. So every 6 months, we just review what we're doing. And I review even like physically with my team. So with training, we're reviewing, are we at a level that I'm able to keep maintaining, or can we lift it in some ways? And we do a deep dive. We find, is it in the gym that we can push the weights up? Or if I've been injured, how can we cut out certain exercises to make sure we don't get injured? We do a big review every 6 months. And then mentally, I have to like be honest with myself, and I have to say, is the amount of effort that I'm putting in right now sustainable? So every year, like let's say the Olympic year, a lot of athletes will put in 100%, like, will really like put in everything to make sure that they are just going for it and no box is left unticked. And I remember after the Paris Olympics, I was positioning myself like that. And then it came to 2025, and I recognized that all of those hard decisions that I made to put in 100% had now become habit to me. Like it was normal to make sure I was having the right diet. It was normal that I was sleeping like the amount of sleep I meant to have, or the training. So then I had to have an honest like reflection and go, is this sustainable? Like, can I keep pushing like this? And I realized actually, yeah, it is. And so then I went, well, how can I jump higher, like in 2025 compared to 2024? And we decided to change a few things up, like my run up and different things. And so I had to have a genuine like think of, am I willing for the next 6 months or the next 12 months to put in the same amount of effort? And after I did that, I've made decisions and lifestyle choices to help me keep pushing, which might mean saying no to a lot of exciting opportunities. Like for example, I didn't do a lot of overseas travel, or even when I go on holidays or resting, like a lot of the times, like we don't do like really physical or strenuous things just to make sure that my body's ready for the off-season training. So it's all of those little things that mentally keep me fresh, because there's been seasons where I've gone, actually, I can't keep putting in this much effort. Like I have to tone it down a bit. And because I'm like, I can show grace to myself, I can also push myself to that next mental like landmark.
Can you give us an example of something that you've had in the last couple of years, or prior to that even, that you reflected that was an unsustainable change that may be beneficial for your high jump, but you needed to relax a little bit for it to be sustainable?
Yeah, my mindset, so I practice high jump, like even like mindset wise, it might be outside of jumping, like I'm studying some high jump with my rhythm and mentally like rehearsing those things. But I realized after a season I need to have like 3 to 4 months of not thinking about high jump at all. Like people might mention high jump, but I haven't seen a track. Like I haven't jumped at all for 3 months. I haven't even thought about it, and I have to do that like quite often at like the second half of the year, just completely tap out. And then when it gets to January or December, mentally I can start picking it up so it's still fresh. Otherwise, I found one year I tried to like keep going and keep thinking about high jump, and by the time the season came, it was just I was over it before I even began.
I bet Matt loves every time you don't want to talk about high jump.
Matt's passion for high jump matches my ability to like not care about high jump in certain ways. You know, we balance each other out really well.
Absolutely. Now, let's go back. You talked about taking risks and the review process you do every single year. Um, you take a lot of risks. You're quite openly bold in how you do things. You don't change everything. You don't throw all the performances out, but you can have an incredibly successful season like you did in 2024, where you medaled at the Olympics, and you can turn it around and go, I'm going to change my run up, which is not, again, not the typical response after quite a successful season is to change something that important to high jump. So talk to me a little bit about that, embracing that environment and that opportunity of learning and growing, when a lot of people would find that as potential to fail. So how do you look at it when there's these changes, these opportunities to change something? How do you look at it?
Every time we change something, it's because we have that goal of getting better in mind. And I know for myself, the times that I've been afraid to change something has often, it hasn't meant that I've maintained, I've actually gone backwards. And so, for example, my run-up changing at the Paris Olympics, they have this new surface that you jump on for major competitions. It's a brand new Mondo surface, and the run up that I was doing, even though I did a great performance at Tokyo and sorry, at Paris Olympics, I was really, it was a real big struggle with the run up that I had. And I thought of it, and we talked about the need to change if we want to keep jumping the heights that I know is possible at the major stage. And so it's sort of like when you're afraid to change things internally, don't worry, there's things that are going to keep changing externally, things that you can't, I mean, I can't have as much pull to the people that create the Mondo tracks to go, no, create it like they used to. It was so much easier and bouncier and things. I realize times are changing, so I have to be willing to be adaptable. My adaptability is actually one of the greatest mental traits that I have because I realize that if I do try and it doesn't work out, that's not a failure for me. We've just ticked another thing in our box. We've just crossed out another thing which could have potentially gotten me there. Like every time we find a weakness, we find a key to the next breakthrough. And so because of that, I know that even if I have a season that isn't as strong, that doesn't define me, and I'm okay with that. So it allows my team and I just to remain ready, looking at ideas, not throwing out everything that we've done for success because you know that you have to keep some things in there, but just being almost brutally honest and going, if there is an opportunity that we can increase it, and I'm fearful that it's not going to bring a good result, that's not a good enough reason to not give it a go. You know, like if it's gonna like severely injure me and stuff by trying it, okay, you know, there's a risk management there. But if it's just being afraid of not being successful, then that's something that's like a bigger issue you need to work through.
Think that's incredibly powerful, Nick. Not only you touch on the perfectionist side, a lot of us try and be perfect, but that actually can damage the attempt to take those risks that allow us to grow. But you also touched on identity. So a lot of athletes attach their identity to their sport. That's very, very common. And it's something I know athlete wellbeing do a lot of work on. You're very good at understanding who you are and how sport is in your life. It doesn't define you as a person. Have you always been like this?
Yeah, identity is something I'm super passionate about because my until I was around 20 years of age, like being an athlete was everything to me. Like that was who I was. I mean, when I'm 6'2" walking down the street, I mean, people think you're an athlete already. So like, you know, but my whole purpose for life was basically like if I'm successful and if I'm doing well in high jump, then life is good. But the double-edged side of that is when high jump wasn't going good, it was awful. because all of my worth was wrapped up on the number next to my personal best. And it really took me almost like when I was 20, I had like a big life transition moment where I recognized that I had like this dream in my head that in order to become a 2 meter high jumper, you needed to live in a certain place, train with certain people, be a certain caliber, be a certain weight, train a certain weight, like all of these factors that I'd sort of made up for myself. And once I had reached all of those factors and realized I still wasn't jumping close to 2 meters, I had that decision to make of, am I willing to leave all of that behind and be okay with just being Nicola without being a high jumper? And even to the point of being willing to give up sport, even to discover that. Um, or will I just keep at it and just try and perfect this, like, um, those definitions of success in my mind? And I left it, and I really like that's sort of like where my faith comes in. Like I realized that I was loved by God without doing anything. And that transformed my life forever, to recognize I don't have to earn something. Um, and so from that kind of identity point, I think I went into sport fresh, realizing if I can't lose something and I can't earn something, like who I am, the value that I have as a person isn't attached to the results that I have on paper. All of a sudden, I was taking risks because it was going to be okay one way or another. And I was still training in my regional area on the Central Coast, and without having big things, nothing really changed on the outside, but inside, massive changes happened. And I just saw so many opportunities rather than barriers when I had that revelation. And I think it's still something, even let's say, what, I'm 29 now, so 9 years later, I'm a very different athlete than I was when I was 20. And yet that identity piece is still something that daily I rely on, because I'm not defined by being a champion even, or the success that I've had. And that's allowed me to be potentially even more successful because I'm not scared of losing those titles. I'm actually able to be free from that.
Let's talk more on that. So, fear holds a lot of people back. And you say that that is something that was holding you back when you were younger. How do you let that go?
Yeah, it's like a loaded question, hey. I find like the fears that you have, if you're trying to fight it with reason, of like, you don't have to be afraid of that, then that's sometimes like you're fighting with the wrong weapon. Um, but like I think it's something that is personal when recognizing what you're afraid of, and then purposely doing things to to fight that fear. So I mean something completely unrelated, but I'm like I was super afraid of like popping car tires, because when I got my red peas, I popped 3 car tires in like 3 months. And I was terrified of every time there was like a rocky roads or something, because I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna pop a car tire. And you know, such an irrational fear meant that I would take certain routes to training and things to avoid dodgy roads. And I went on this journey in like 2021 where I went like, sorry, 2020, 2021, where I was like, I need to really address those fears outside of training so that when I'm facing a high jump bar, I'm able to run at it full pelt because I'm not afraid. And so I like purposely, I was like, right, you're gonna drive down this road and it's gonna be okay. And it was just full of like these rocks and stuff. And I don't know, like outside of training, life is the best training for competition. That's what I feel like. So I like purposely had to drive down these roads to the point where I realized that even if the tire popped, what's more important is that I'm not afraid of these things anymore. So I don't know, maybe a little bit irrelevant, but let's say for a high jump perspective, I was afraid, like, I was just like afraid of like running towards a bar above my head, and running at full acceleration to the last steps. So I would naturally slow down. My second last step would slow down, and then I would like step out. And it didn't matter how far away my run up was, because I hadn't dealt with that inside. No matter what I did, I wasn't able to position myself correctly to jump high. And when I recognized that this was an opportunity to overcome fear, then like my mindset like really changed, where I almost embraced it. Even if I missed the bar, the victory that I had for those competitions and those training jumps was, were you brave enough to run at the bar at full acceleration, regardless if you hit it or not? And when I started doing that and celebrating even the jumps that the bar fell off, but I did the right thing that I'd been focusing on. That then eventually translated to me jumping over the bar, with the right acceleration and clearing it well. And like I learned how to celebrate regardless if the bar stayed on or not.
I've definitely seen that and I love it. I remember, I think it was around 2018, 2019 at New South Wales state titles. You came in, everyone else had finished and you came in, and there were young girls and they were quite upset. Maybe a few of them didn't jump how they had wanted to. There was a little bit of, yeah, just attitude happening. Teenage, we all go through emotion like that. But you missed a bar and you came bounding over to Matt and you went, "Oh, I loved everything about that. I just didn't clear it." And I saw every girl in that competition turn their head and look at you, and their faces were in shock. It was almost like you unlocked something for them that went, it's okay to be happy even if we don't go over a bar, which I don't think there was a huge amount of people showing that. And even still, there's not a huge amount of that, especially in the elite level, because competition is tight and there's a lot going on. But you're always someone, every single jump, you show joy, you show love, you show excitement. Have you always been like that? I know you were since I've known you, but when you were a junior, were you the same, or has this come on later? And what drives this?
Yeah, I think like my like when I was a junior, it wasn't as much. Like I was smiling a lot when I was getting over the bar as a junior. But when it wasn't working and I was just frustrated that, like, again, as a junior, I was really easily frustrated because my whole world revolved around the number next to my name. But I would say when I had that identity piece at around 20, when I recognized that doesn't define you, you're going to be okay, then that's sort of where this real big joy came from. And the joy of jumping, like I don't jump that often in training, and I don't jump that compared to like most athletes, I don't really compete that often. So when I do get the opportunity to jump, it's something that I still really love to do. And the opportunity, like my starting height is actually higher than my training jumps. And so every time I make the starting height and people are like, she's already smiling. I'm like, I can't do that on a normal basis. Like I'm really happy that I cleared that height. And it's an amazing, like my that's quite a high starting height. And so to even have the ability to be healthy enough to compete. And I think Thanksgiving really changes your mindset. Like being thankful for the things around you when you're competing, and even for the nerves that come with it. Like it's still a joy. And when athletics becomes a chore, or it becomes like, I mean, some of my training is a chore. Like there's a few things that it's like, okay, this is just really hard work. But when I'm out there competing, I know that these competitions, uh, jumping puts me in a situation where I'm in need, and I'm pushed to my limit. And that bar, like it doesn't get any lower, like it remains the same. And so recognizing when I do clear it, it's just amazing, because I don't know, for me it's faith in action. Like I literally, like, you hope that all of these things, all the little things that you do at training will translate to jumping high. And even when it doesn't, you learn so much even through those missed bars. So I love the ability to test myself in a competition, and you just realize that it gives you so much more fuel for the rest of your training when you're able to compete.
Let's talk about competition now. So many people, when they go into a competition, they're they're we've talked about comparison. They're possibly thinking about someone else, but you're you're not only not worrying about that, you're actually genuinely excited for your opposition, your competitors. You at Diamond League last year, which you'd done the PB height, which was amazing, and Yaroslava went up for 206, and she had the last jump between you. If she had have cleared it, you would have lost your first Diamond League title. I know you don't think like that, but how do you stand up there with a giant smile, cheering for her like you want to get over the bar? I think that's a really different way. I know it's a very field athlete and multis way of thinking, but talk to me. How have you always done that? Have you always been excited for your competitors, or has that come on later? And just talk to me about the mindset around that.
Yeah, like when people are doing well, um, especially being in the sport for many years. Like I made my first Diamond Leagues when I was 23, 22. Yeah, 22. And so for the last 7 years, I've been tr competing with a lot of the same women, like Yaroslava, like Eleanor. I mean, I've competed with Eleanor for like close to 20 years. We've been competing for a long time. You recognize when they're jumping and they're jumping well, just the cost of it. Like I do a lot of training by myself, and so when you have other competitors doing well, you can't help but be like so joyful for them when you recognize the cost. And also like when you realize that without them, without your competitors, it's not a competition. Like it's if they weren't jumping well and you're winning, it's not fun. Like, if you're starting your height after everyone's finished, which if you're a high jumper, you can be used to that in certain settings, right? So when you have other people, I know that every time somebody beats me and jumps well, like respect, because I know how hard I train and I know how hard they train. And I know that when they're doing personal bests, like when Yaroslava broke the world record, what an opportunity and honor to jump with somebody who's done something that no one else has ever done before. And if you respect your competitors and you become friends with them and you cheer them on, you're able to impact their lives in ways that performances could never impact, right? Like the relationships and the people that you meet through sport is one of the greatest gifts that you will ever get. And so I know that when they do well, I get to have the opportunity to be pushed to the top. There's been competitions like World Indoors this year where I turned up and I didn't know how I was going to compete, didn't have like the absolute best preparation, and I was like, well, we'll just see what happens. And then four of us cleared 1 meter 99 on our first attempt, and it was just like the most fun that I'd ever had. Like when I just kept seeing all of us get over the bar, and then we're all attempting it. I went, oh, this is what's been missing, It was so great, and you just want everyone else to experience that, because at the end, it's not me versus my competitors, it's me versus the bar, and we're all together trying to verse the bar, and that bar can the higher than it goes, like the more ground, like the more records that are broken across the world, like annually, like it's really like that kind of impact. I've seen it even in Australia when I cleared 2 meters for the first time. And then all of a sudden, like when I saw Eleanor clear 2 meters, like it's just amazing because you recognize what it means personally, and then you get to share it. And your joy doesn't get halved, it gets doubled, right? So it's like it's something that you can really appreciate and learn. You can learn so much from the people that you compete with if you're not so afraid of seeing them do well.
Now, talk to me about the different mindsets. So in Tokyo, you were in some circles an unexpected medalist. In Paris, you were almost an expected medalist. And now, again, you are one to beat. Talk to me about that pressure, about how you handled going from, I guess, the hunter to the hunted in sporting terms. What was that like and what has changed?
Uh, the the pressure I would say to go into the Tokyo Olympics, it it wasn't quite there. So compared to let's say Paris, I recognized like the night before, like the Paris Olympics, I realized I'm like, look, after tomorrow, like everything is going to change again. I'll either lose the title that I have, I'll either maintain it, or I'll get an Olympic champion title. Like something like it's going to change as far as sporting terms. But I just had peace because I know that like the sport, my participation in sport isn't determined on the performance that I get. So I knew I'm like, regardless of that, like I'm gonna learn something, I'm gonna grow as a person, we're gonna be okay. But for that term of like being hunted, yeah, it is I see like a responsibility as such. Like, when you're at the top, you're a leader in sport. People look to you for all things, not just for training or competition. They see you as in the way of how to perform, how to celebrate. It's a lot of responsibility. But I weighed the costs before I got into sport of like, are you willing to be that and to be like that role model even for the people that are jumping with you? And I just like I hope that I do it well because it's a lot. But when it comes to pressure, I have to keep the main thing the main thing. So when it comes to competitions, I'm not thinking about like, oh, well, I'm number one ranked. I don't have to worry about these people and things. No, the moment you think about that, you're gone. Like you can't think like that. Like when I'm in the competition, um, especially when it doesn't matter who I'm versing, I really have to be so committed to what goals have I got for today's competition, what process are we working with, and I get to share it with these amazing people that are going to really push me to make sure that they're testing the process and the kind of mindset that I have is for me versus that bar. So that hasn't changed, but I actually preferred being like last in a field and then making making that up on the way versus being first in the field. It's not as fun, but I still really enjoy like um having to have really big goals and whoever that I'm versing that doesn't change those goals. The only thing as far as a high jumper is having a progression in mind if all of the athletes for some reason don't go past 2 meters or something. In my head, I've already got about 7 or 8 different scenarios in my head just in case. And if an athlete, let's say an athlete's beating me or an athlete's going with me almost the whole way, that's not an interruption to the plans or the perfect jumps. Like that's like a redirection, and that's exciting to me because that's sort of what you train for. Like you always train as if you're going to have somebody there and then you win on your third attempt and it's like a big thing. But yeah, that's sort of how I sort of go with it.
No, absolutely. You're talking about coming in and out of those mindsets. Talk to me about, I guess, flicking the switch. So going from, a normal day into comp mode, into training mode. What do you do, or how do you flick that switch when you're exhausted, when you don't want to be there, either competition or training? How do you change that mindset?
For competition, we do a lot of preparation in the lead up to it. So, for example, let's say for a competition like an Olympic Games, we've spent the last year or 2 years building up for that one competition, and I have to recognize that my feelings don't determine my ability, and my feelings don't determine the impact that I can make. And my feelings, like, I have a low bar for my feelings because let's just say that your feelings are sort of, as soon as you're in a position where there's risk involved, your feelings can just not want to be there, and that's actually okay. Like, I can listen to my feelings after the event, but during the event, like, mindset wise, I have like a very strict, like, regardless of how you're feeling today, you're going to do this, this, and this. But for training as such, um, when I'm having, let's say, like a really, really hard training block, like right now I'm in one of my hardest training blocks, and there's a few sessions during the week that I just know are going to be really hard. I mentally sort of prepare by trying to free up a bit of mental bandwidth beforehand. Like, for example, if I've got a training session at midday, the things that I do in the morning have to be like um considered, like, is this going to help or is this going to take away? So I'm really like, I've got pretty big boundaries when it comes to around training, just for like my mindset, because you can do everything, but not everything's beneficial. Like, we had a TV crew come into one of my training sessions last week, and it was like an 8-hour day. It was something that I didn't really have control over in the situation. So when I came to my training session, I was tired, like, not just physically, but pretty mentally, but there was work to do. So we did that. And then afterwards, we recognized that my recovery time, like this week, I've had to have so much recovery time because I'm still like paying for what I did last week, based on like how exerting that was. And so my feelings, like, one thing that, like, I suppose everyone knows, like, I love to journal, and at the end of the day I can write out um what did I do before training that really helped my mindset, even though I wasn't feeling it. I had the mindset that I was like a champion mindset, that I was able to get 100% out of that session. And then I try and replicate that. Or similarly, if there was something that I did that really didn't help, like, for example, maybe I had to do like 3 hours of administration work. It's like, look, you just can't do that. Or, like, there's sometimes you can for certain times, whatever it is. But I'm just really mindful that if I can go in with a clear head and can what I can control, I really make sure I give my best to that. Then for a training session, it can help me even if I don't feel it. I've gone, well, I've made these decisions today in order to get the most out of it. Let's see if they measure up. So it's, you know what, it's like sort of like at the end of the day, will I have something good to write about this day? And that keeps me going a lot.
I love that. It's really important to always find something positive that's happened in a training session rather than focus on what needs to be done. Now, we've talked a lot about your own mindset and how you approach. Can you tell me what the most impactful things or thing a coach has said to you around a competition? Just for our coaches, just what have you heard or what has been told to you that has had a big impact on that day or for that comp?
Yeah. Let's say last year around the Diamond League final, Matt has a lot of trust in the way that he coaches me. So there might be a few words that he says that immediately just like make sense in my training or in my competition. So I know we had a few cues last year, and I'd have to get out my journal to know exactly what it was, but um, as soon as he said this one cue, pretty much like all I did was like gave him a thumbs up and went like, I don't need any more. What you've just said is perfect. But that's basically what I've said, just with like a thumbs up. And then I kept writing. And now, I was attempting a personal best Matt wasn't like trying to yell off the stands to say, yes, but you need to work on this and this. He has so much trust that when I said like, hey, what you've just said, I'm excited. And basically like he'll like when he can yell out, he'd be like, you've got this, remember this one thing. And so I think like I really admire the way that Matt coaches because there's a lot of trust there. And we communicate a lot during training of the one word that can help or the one word that I need at that certain level. So I've been really encouraged by the way that Matt has so much trust for me that he doesn't have to add different things just in case that one cue doesn't work. Like he really we've learned how my mindset works and how I can get the most out of myself, and he trusts me with that. And I think like as far as coaches, like when it comes to honesty, um, Nikolai, like I remember in 2021, it was right before I did the 2 meter jump. I was competing in Canberra and it was pouring down rain, and I was attempting 194 and I didn't get it. So I had like 191. And I remember you just said like, look, Nick, like I'm not like a high jump expert, but it just looks like you're trying a bit too hard. And that kind of honesty and vulnerability, you're like, look at the start, like you're 191, you weren't as tense. It's like, leave it to me, you know? It's like I thought I'd just give you that feedback. And that was maybe one of the biggest pieces of advices that allowed me to jump 2 meters because I went, wow, Nick's right, you know, and I talked to Matt about it, I talked to the rest of the team, and we really we honed in on like how can I make sure that I'm not trying to tense up and put as much too much effort at the start of my run up, but allow myself to be at full acceleration at the last step. And so, yeah, like I think the trust as well as the honesty and communication, like the way that I've been corrected, it's never been out of a place of like you're doing all of this wrong and that's why you're missing the bar and stuff. It's just like honesty of like, hey, this is what I've observed. How do you feel? And as an athlete, that's like that brings a lot of validation to like, oh wow, the way that I perceive my jumping is getting noticed by my coaches, and they want my advice just as much as I want their advice. And that's allowed me, I think, to be able to keep jumping those heights years after.
Absolutely. Also, yes, anyone who knows me knows I'm absolutely no good at high jump, especially if they've seen me attempt a bar, which, Nick, I do need to show you some hilarious videos at some point. So I want to go on to some other questions that have been audience sent in. Some we've already covered off, but there's a few around mental blocks, and mental blocks are when you've plateaued, mental blocks when you have looked at a bar and it's higher than you've ever done and you've just gone, what is happening? So talk to me about how you overcome some of these mental blocks and plateaus.
Yeah, it's it can be quite hard when you let's say I know what it's like to look at a bar and just be like 2 centimeters ago I was clearing it and now I'm looking at this bar and I've never seen something so high in my life. You know, it's really hard. Mental block for me, I have to, I can acknowledge that I've had that thought, but then I have to be really careful of the next steps and the next thoughts that I have, the way that I deal with that. So, for example, let's say for that high jump bar scenario, rather than being like, wow, that is such a high bar, I can just be like, you know, I'm not trying to be like, yeah, but you're a good jumper. I'm like, none of that. Mindset wise, I'll look at it and go, it's high. So, therefore, the takeoff has to be very fast and has to be powerful. In order for my takeoff to be powerful, I'm leaning hard into these last few steps. In order to lean powerfully and run fast, my start of my run up is tall. I'm running rhythmically, and then I've got that in my head so that by the time I'm attempting the bar, I haven't just like I haven't let that thought get in my way of like, this is too high, you're gonna miss it, you're going to embarrass yourself if you attempt it and you miss it. Like all of those, they're natural thoughts. And I can't try and just say like, no, no, I won't. Like that's not a way to, that's not a mental way of fixing the problem. Rather use that as a way to rehearse of what you are going to do. And if you had all the strength in the world, what would you do in order to make sure you're clearing that bar? And there's many bars that I've actually like been able to clear because I've had that mindset of this is what I'm doing and this is the way I'm running. But for let's say a mental block when you're not seeing a lot of improvements and it's a hard slog, whether it's like injury um, or you're just competing, and the more you compete, the worse your performances are getting. I've had a few of those in Europe, and it's really hard. I think like I've had to detach. I've had to recognize the goals that I've set and go on. Like, for example, after the Paris Olympics, I really struggled for a few competitions because it was like this massive build up, and then about a week later, we were competing again. And I hadn't recovered from how intense that experience was, and the joy as well as like not meeting expectations or realizing my run up has to change in order to jump. Like there was a lot going on. And so I had to realize, okay, but what am I getting out of today? Like, what is the main thing? It might not be a personal best, but what am I aiming for? It might be like, I want to have a great knee drive today. And if I just work on that one thing, today's a success. And so it can sometimes feel defeating changing those goals of being like a personal best to I just want to work on my knee drive. But in order to get the most out of the season and make sure you squeeze as much gold as you can out of like every opportunity, I've had to be quick to realize that there's always something in every opportunity. And if I try and discover it after the opportunity's passed, there's things I've missed. So I'm really honest with like, is that goal like are you in PB shape? Is this PB possible today? Are we aiming for a PB? And if it's pouring down rain, it's like, okay, maybe all right, I'm in PB shape and the weather conditions are saying otherwise. What can I be doing today to make sure that I get the most out of it? And like that was me during World Champs. Like I jumped 2 meters and then we had a downpour for an hour and I was in the best shape of my life. And rather than being super upset that I didn't have the opportunity to potentially jump with a good track, I then went, well, let's try and get a wet weather personal best today. What are we working on and what can I make sure to get the most out of it? And so it's sort of like being dynamic with those goals helps go through a mental block, because it's not being inconsistent. It's just realizing that you always need to have something to aim for, like something to hope for. And if you don't have that, or you've set that bar way too high and your body's not there, it's going to be very hard to remain, yeah, I suppose, remain ready to embrace every opportunity.
That's so good and so process focused. There's been a few questions also around when you're not feeling it in a comp, how do you turn it around? And how do you turn it around, say, on let's say a height that you know you can do and you can do comfortably, and it's gone to your third attempt, so the pressure is ramped up. How do you manage that mentally in those pressure situations?
Yeah, third attempt. There's a different kind of strength that comes on a third attempt. I don't know, like sometimes I think, why did I wait for my third attempt to get that? No, I when I'm in a situation, let's say like 1 meter 96, that's what I had to do to qualify for World Indoors. And I know I can do that with my eyes closed now. So I'm like, right, but it's still a very high height and I hit a wall almost every competition when I'm attempting it because it's 10 centimeters over my head and it's that one height that you need to be on for. And so I when I'm looking at it and let's say I've missed the first two attempts, I have to be very focused to recognize that like it's possible to get this. Don't beat yourself up for the things that have passed, right? Learn from it. So for the first attempt, what hit it off? That's something that I can just really go, okay, well, what hit it off? If Matt's there, I'm looking at him. Matt might give me some feedback. Let's say second attempt, I've worked on that one thing. Did I successfully work on that one thing? If it's a yes or no, then you're like, great, I've got another opportunity to work on this. I recognize if I missed that bar, then we have a very big thing to work on in training that week. So like, I know there's nothing wasted, right? But let's say I make it, like, I have the ability then to work on that for the next height. So whatever happens right now, I think like being an athlete is recognizing, um, especially as a high jumper, recognizing as an athlete myself, what I'm doing. If is it in the right positions? Is it help? Like, did it feel like I could actually jump high? Like all of those things help. But there's been a lot of times that my first attempt, I've hit it off maybe with my feet. In my second attempt, I've moved it back, but I've put too much speed in it, and then I've knocked the bar off, and it's not a good jump, and I know it. I realize I'm like, all right, you've now decided, like you now know that you need to move it back, but the speed needs to work. And I just go, what an opportunity. Now I have to do it under pressure, and pressure brings out the most out of me. How exciting. And if I miss it, I realize, okay, we have a lot of run-up work to do. But if I make it, man, it's like the most joy ever, because I go, oh, I'm so thankful I've got another 3 attempts at least to try and do this right. And yeah, I find a third attempt brings a lot out. But if I run through the bar and I get like emotional, like I mean, it happens a lot in high jump of you really wanted to keep jumping, but it just didn't work out, and the third attempt actually took away, like it wasn't able to, I wasn't able to get it. Then I have to recognize that potentially in training I need to be doing a few things that are going to be high pressure. So, if it might be timing things, it might be only allowed to be doing like one attempt at something. Whatever it is, to be building up that resilience to be able to perform well under pressure. Everything is trainable. It's not just like me as a person can't deal with pressure. Like you can train that. So, yeah, so I think that just helps me with my third attempts.
100%. Now, I'm going to ask one more question, knowing that we are about to run out of time. But I wanted to ask what would you personally recommend for an athlete who feels like they're putting in a ton of work, doing all the right things, and then they're not seeing that progress? I'm sure this has happened to you at different parts of your career. How do you flip that switch when you know that it's potentially coming, but you're not seeing the outcome of that work?
Yeah, that's hard.
Give you a challenging one to finish.
Yeah. When you're putting in the effort and then you're not seeing the results, I think it's important in across like all different kinds of training to be keeping something that you can keep working on. So for example, we added in gymnastics in 2024 and maybe 2023, like just before Olympics. And um, it was a very low bar to start with because I was just not that good across a lot of things. And even though my gym was remaining the same, and at times sprinting was remaining the same, because I was doing something with new stimulus, I was seeing growth across like each week. And that really helped me like mentally, because I knew that I was improving, but because it wasn't in one area, well, I had a new area to work on. And so as an athlete, especially like with junior athletes, when I know from like 18 to 21, like for a lot of my squad and a lot of girls that I've jumped with, like you often don't see a lot of progress. That was sort of as far as my progression from about 17 to 21. It was like very minimal, even though in training I was doing so much work. And my coach was really encouraging me, but we added a lot of different new things in outside of the jumps in this gym, just to see progress in ways and like and celebrate that. So when I was jumping, and I was in a bit of a slog, at least I had something that I could keep like mentally fresh for. Um, and I think being around like in competition and being able to see athletes and talking to other athletes as well, um, a lot of athletes go through it, and strength in numbers. Like if you can talk to athletes and feel heard of like, look, I've been training, but I'm not seeing growth. I trust my coach, where I'm seeing a few things, but in competition, it's not coming through. Like I think even just being able to mentally and verbally process that with someone is a big help.
That's fantastic, Nick. Now, we'll call it there for today. Firstly, I want to thank you massively, everyone, for attending, and also you, Nick, for sharing so much so openly. We are lucky enough to have Nicola speaking at our National Coaching Conference. She'll be speaking on the Saturday, the 10th of October, up in Brisbane. So we may also have her for another mindset one in future because she is just unbelievable at it. So thank you so much, Nick, and appreciate everyone for joining us. Have a great night.